Alright, if we go up to our toolbar here and look next to our terrain sculpt mode, there's a button called terrain detailed texture paint mode. And if we click that, we go into texture painting mode. And you'll see these grids appear on your map, and these are called chunks. And they just sort of grid out the entire terrain into separate chunks of textural areas. And it's really helpful because they have a little indicator here of what textures you have in what chunk. And a note for texture painting is you can only have up to 4 textures in one chunk at one time. So if you want to have grass, gravel, rock, and beach sand in one texture, that's max texture you're going to have in that chunk at any time. So if you wanted to add some short grass in there, you'd have to take out one of those other textures before you could add in another texture. So 4 is your limit for each chunk. When we're painting, our brush tools, they pretty much stay the same. Radius still controls the brush diameter, or brush radius, brush size. Our opacity controls the opacity or transparency of our texture going onto the surface. Hardness, again, controls the edges, how soft or hard the edges of this texture painting are going to be. And the value kind of works like opacity, is it controls the amount that is going down at one time onto this terrain. So if we wanted to add some, let's say, dirt texture to this terrain, we go down to our texture layer here, and there's a pull down menu, and we can select all these different textures. So we'll go ahead and grab some gravel here, and we'll set our brush to, let's say, 10, and our value can go back to 1, and we can paint some nice dirt onto our terrain. You'll notice it's got a nice hard edge to it too, and that is because we're in our hardness mode is in 1, and hardness goes from 0 to 1, so 1 being the hardest and 0 being the softest. So if we knock this down to like 0.05 and move our camera a little bit, we can paint, and you'll notice it comes up a little bit softer around the edges, and it's just an easy way to change your tool options to get a softer edge. And you can also use the smooth command to smooth them out even further, and that just blends your texture into the texture that's next to it. So there's a couple of commands. The replace or the remove command is a pretty handy one too. Let's say we have 4 textures. Let's put 4 textures in this chunk. We've already got 2. We'll put some rock in there, and we'll put some asphalt in there. So now we got 4 textures. We've got grass, gravel, asphalt, and rock all in one chunk. Now let's say we wanted to put some short grass in here, and we can paint and paint and paint and paint, but it doesn't do anything because we have our max amount of textures in this chunk. So to put a new texture in, we'd have to take one out, and we can't paint over it because it won't let us paint any other textures. Well, that's where our replace, or excuse me, our remove option comes in. And so we can set our texture layer to the texture we want to remove. Let's say right now we want to move the asphalt. So we'll go to asphalt, and we right click because we've got it set to our right click menu. We'll right click, and it'll ask us if we want to remove the current layer from the terrain chunk, and we hit OK, and it removes it, and now it's placed it as wheat. So that didn't really help us much because it always defaults back to the wheat texture for some reason. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but you learn to work around it. So we can actually go to our wheat texture now and try and remove that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how much you've set up. Now, another way to do it, because we have 4 textures in here, you can always go in here and just add, cover up one texture with another texture you have in the box, in chunks. So we can go in here and go grass and cover up all this wheat. And now we see wheat's gone from our contents of our chunk. So now we only have 3 textures, and we can add our short grass if we wanted to. So that kind of illustrates what is going on with the texture layers and the limits that you have to deal with while working in Giants. That really covers texture, editing. There's not much else to it. These are pretty self-explanatory, and you can just play with the settings and get nice combinations of what you want. And it just, it's a little practice, and you get pretty good at it pretty quick. So we'll just take this all back to grass, so we have a nice grass surface to work with here. And next we're going to be looking at terrain detail painting and foliage painting.